This is the American Indians, Indigenous Peoples Truths. Justice for all, the most dangerous show on media anywhere. OCO and greetings. Halito. To all of you out there, this is the Indigenous Peoples Truths, the 360 degrees. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hi, Elder. How are you doing? And happy Black History Month.
And the very same to you.
Thank you.
It's always good to see your face. I think we have Spike Moss with us, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And he's here with us this evening to do our fireside chat. So let's go ahead and bring him in. But before we do that, let's do our land acknowledgement.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the traditional stewards of our lands that we reside on, and especially the ancestors, descendants, and all Indigenous people who live now and have ever lived on this land that we call Turtle Island and beyond. But more than acknowledgement, let's honor and support our existing Indigenous communities by helping them continue their land-based practices, traditions, and way of life, by dispelling false narratives about their history and people while promoting their authentic truths, helping them heal from past wrongs and offenses, and assisting them in protecting and restoring back to health the land, nature, and the water which brings life.
Absolutely. You know, Leslie, this week I've been attending the NCAI, the National Congress of American Indians, Winter Forum here in Washington, D.C. I met some very interesting people, and the president of the organization, her name is Fawn Sharp. She's an Alaska Native. What a wonderful woman. She gave a speech that took me back to the 1960s when Dr. Martin Luther King was alive. And I'm just going to lay this on her. She is the Martin Luther King of Indian country.
Wow.
And hopefully we will have her on the show with us within the next 2 weeks. I can't wait for you to meet her.
I can't wait to meet her myself. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
So this evening we have our fireside chat, and we wanted to get into some discussions, especially to this particular month because it is Black History Month. You know, opening up to the audience to speak about the intersection between Black people of America and the Indigenous people of this place. So, and just talk about other stuff, but let's bring Spike in so we can start our conversation. And I just want to let our audience members know that we are open right now for any questions that you may have regarding history, the future of that intersectionality, or anything else that you would like to ask this evening.
Absolutely. Hey, Spike, how you doing?
Just fine. How y'all doing out there?
We're doing good.
Right.
So let's start this conversation. We're still waiting for Judge Joe Brown to come in with us on this conversation. Spike, there's been an abnormal increase of violence and shootings within all of the communities in America. And I know you have been fighting this for a long time. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I started out in 1966. What got me started was police brutality. Since that time, I handled police brutality cases, civil rights and human rights cases consistently in the African American community and the Native American community about 42 years straight, taking their cases of civil, human rights, and police brutality too. It's been my life. I did spend a lot of time going across America doing gang summits to save as many children as I could to get them out of harm's way in the 90s. Basically, cut my teeth, human rights, civil rights.
So you were a real close friend with Clyde Belcourt.
I would say so.
And you know, Clyde and I were friends as well, along with Dennis Banks, and so many of our indigenous people that have gone on the spirit world. How was your experience with Clyde?
It was a learning experience. When he first saw us get out there, we were real young. Most of us were teenagers. And he was curious about how we were standing up to police brutality. Our first case was a beating of a 14-year-old Black girl, no crime committed, in broad daylight in the middle of downtown Minneapolis. And that's the first time we actually stood up against that injustice. Clyde was watching that. He came over to meet us and see where we were going, what we were trying to do, and he wanted to engage. So he began to engage with us with these cases of civil rights, human rights, and police brutality cases. And he would always come, always bring Native American brothers with him, always bring the drum with him. And we would march in the snow, in the cold, in the summer, whatever it took to fight back. One day he told me he wanted to start an organization just like ours, and he did. Several of them sat down and built AIM and got started with a national organization. But it led to 42 years of my life of taking Native American cases right alongside African American cases. The only difference was many of them were beaten and taken to jail. Many of us were beaten or killed, never got to jail. And we just began to fight those cases. And then I shared with you last year, we used to take those cases of missing Native American women, in which we were told to be crazy and out of our mind. Minnesota does not harm women in that manner, but mothers and grandmothers kept coming to us with missing women. And so we kind of switched gears way back then with that too and started taking that on too.
I understand that they would call roadkill. What was roadkill?
Well, you walk from the reservation to a store or somewhere where you want to get something you need, gas, whatever. They catch you walking down the road, they would simply run over you. And in Minnesota, they just leave it alone like you were roadkill. Nobody would look into it. No one would ever be arrested. No one would ever be charged. And this was going on almost as long as the missing Native American women.
So I understand that you and Clyde got together when you all were young, and both of you guys were boxers, fighters.
Yo, same team. Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, we were the city and the state champions every year, junior Golden Glove, open Golden Gloves, as well as novelists. And Clyde was fighting at a higher weight than me and a division before me with older boys, but I joined that same team.
How'd you make out?
I won 7 gold gloves in my lifetime.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So with that experience and the coming together of the Native community and the Black communities, there's a lot of questions about that, because there are so many of our people, when I say our people, indigenous people, native people, that want to look at you like you're a dog or a cat or a pedigree. And if you don't have a tribal card, then they don't want to accept you. Or if you're a shade too dark, then they want to hang this banner on you that, oh, that's just a black guy trying to be an Indian. But, you know, I have my tribal card, and I had a fellow in Washington, D.C., who was a pretty high-ranking guy with one of the Native organizations. And he put this lie out, oh, Jay Nightwolf is just a black guy trying to be an Indian. Mm-hmm. I got my family history back on one side, my Cherokee history back to the 1700s. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather on my dad's side was a Shoshone Indian out there from around the Four Corners. Mm-hmm. So I know that history. And his wife, my grandma Sylvia, was a Taino Indian from Puerto Rico. And recently, within the last 12 to 14 years, I discovered that a young lady that lives not too far from me and a cousin, Vanessa is actually from the island of Orkin. And we got to talking one day and come to find out both of their grandmothers and great-grandmothers were sisters. Mm. So, you know, this whole false narrative of walking around like you're a native poster boy and thinking that you got the answers is all wrong. It's all wrong. Mm-hmm. Prove to me that I'm not an Indian. Mm-hmm. If you can't prove it, you need to go somewhere, sit down and shut up.
Can I ask why this is such a big necessary thing, knowing that our history goes all the way back and that there has been intersectionality before, you know, going on for 50,000 years, why it is so important for people to flash that pedigree as being indigenous? You know, what's the importance of that? Because in my opinion, we're running neck and neck as being African American and indigenous as far as being hated here in this country. So why is there this division?
It's called colonization. And the colonizers were very good at what they did to Indian people. Clyde would always tell me, don't worry about that. You know who you are, you know your family history, and walk the walk. And that's what I've always done for the last, oh God, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 years. But one of the things that we fail to understand is that we're still here. After all they did to us, when they came over here, these were the descendants out of the Caucasus Mountains. And they did a real good job on colonizing our minds. Did that answer your question, Leslie?
It answers my question. And I kind of want to mention something today. Our dear friend Pura Faye actually posted about Jessie Mae Hemphill, who was a guitarist from Mississippi, who was of indigenous and African American heritage. And she always talked about her indigenous heritage because common to what we know, most of us who are from the South have indigenous heritage. There's always been an intermixing of our cultures. You know, it's prominent within our music. It's prominent in our daily life and what we did. And so part of a conversation, it was a man who actually responded to that and who is a guitarist, and I think his name is Jimmy Arnold. He stated that back in the day, we couldn't tell people that we were indigenous. If we told the white man or the census taker that we were indigenous, we would be taken to the back and shot. And so we just told them we were colored. And so this misinterpretation of who we are as individuals here as African Americans, now that we're celebrating Black History Month, is that we are just not Black, but we are a mixture of cultures as a race. And we are not allowed to celebrate or honor our ancestors from that particular race, because we've been forced and pigeonholed to identify as something that is within a certain caste of America, which is a lower caste system of America.
Well, you know, I belong to the American Indian Society of Washington, D.C. And when Obama was elected, like every other president, we would throw a ball, an inaugural ball. And at the ball that Obama was celebrating with us, I met a guy who was from the Kiowa people of Oklahoma. And I said to him, I said, "How are you, brother?" He says, "I'm fine. How are you?" I said, "I'm doing good." He says, "You know, I'm so tired of these people talking about being Black Indians." And I looked at him. I said, "Did you know that before there was a Trail of Tears right here on the East Coast, that people had intermarried and became part of the tribe?" "Oh, no, they just want to be Indians." I said, "You know what? We can have this conversation, just you and me. So let's walk outside where there's nobody around and we can settle this too." Now he's sitting there and I asked him, I said, "Well, what is your heritage?" "I'm Kiowa Indian." I said, "Okay." I said, "And what else?" "Well, one of my grandfather was Irish, and on my mother's side, I had another person that was from somewhere in Europe." I said, "So you're not a full Indian, are you?" "Yes, I am." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "You're of mixed heritage and you need to wake up and stop pointing fingers at people." What do you have to say about that, bro?
Well, me personally, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as she says, it goes back so far. I mean, people have to realize, first of all, even though we were brought here in chains, many of us ran from those reservations. Many of us got away, but we got away with those Native American tribes where they had land, where we could hide, where we could live and learn their ways, survive, and never go back to slavery. Because if you were recaptured, they take you right back to the master you ran from.
Mm-hmm.
We started families all the way back then with Native Americans. We married into those tribes. And so I don't know where the nonsense came from, but it is what it is. My grandmother, her name was Melissa, and Charlie Bailey was her father, and he's full blood. He's from Vaden, Mississippi. I never allowed anybody to tell me what I should think about that. I accept him. I think that I'm a lot like him. I mean, he was he owned his own apple orchard. He was doing well. He had land, beautiful home. And when he started fighting about the right to vote, they had to leave the land. All the land was leveled. All the buildings on the land were burnt down. When they reconnected with the family, everything was gone because he chose to stand up when they realized to change a lot of the laws that were threatening us, our health and welfare. We had to vote. And when we started fighting for the right to vote, these are the things he lost. And as he walked around that town in the daytime, while our grandmother and all of her brothers and sisters came to Missouri, he came later that night. And no one ever went back there till I went back about 8 or 9 years ago. I was the first to go back in 100 some years to find the Baileys myself. And I went with 2 other people and I actually found them, the generations that were left. But I just think people will say whatever they want to say. I don't think we should focus on what they say. I think we should let it be what it is, live what we are, be proud of it, don't run from it. And people will be people. Our people were people. Charlie married my great-grandmother, full-blood African. He was full-blood Native American. So what?
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm him. I know I do what he did. And I know I did what my grandmother did. And so there's Black people everywhere. If you check their family tree, you will see Africa. But you will see that too. I follow mine all the way back to South Africa. I follow them all the way back to the Cameroons, all the way back when they were sold from there to Kentucky to a man named McDaniel, all the way there, sold to Missouri to a Frenchman named Bastille. You just got to look into it. But I'm not going to separate, one side of my family as the other. It's my family. And those of us who run that way, we need to say it that way. I welcome my family bloodline, who we are. Don't let nobody take it from us. And I'm not trying to make a difference. I am who I am. Proud of it.
And you know what, Leslie, you're actually Mississippi Choctaw and Black, right?
Right. So actually, believe it or not, I'm intersected 3 ways with indigenous heritage. So my grandfather's side, we are Mississippi Choctaw. My father's side, we are Catawba, who were lumped into the Cherokee Nation when we were marched to the Trail of Tears. And then I also found out that we have a South American indigenous heritage, which I'm still researching. My point is that, our relationship as Africans, people from Africa, and those who were here on Turtle Island before Columbus came, we have actually been intermingling way before slavery. And I think it was you, Elder, that told me that when slaves came here and escaped from ships, they had nowhere to go. They knew they couldn't go back to the ocean, but they ran into the forest. They were embraced by the natives who were in the forest because they had seen them before. Mm-hmm. They recognized them. They knew that they were different from the Europeans. And so they embraced them. And most, accepted them into the families and said that they were their people when the slave hunters came looking for them. They said, these are our people. This is not, So this is history that we've not been told. I guess most indigenous people have not been told about this intersectionality, interconnection between us as people that's been going on for centuries in Mexico, in South America. I found out recently that a Fijian tribe who looks, Aboriginal, intermingled with the indigenous population of Brazil. So these are things that we must teach ourselves regarding who we are as people. We are forced to identify as something that is, without color, without any type of heritage. And I once said to somebody recently that I'm very proud of my European heritage. I have Irish heritage, and I'm very proud of my Choctaw and Catawba heritage. If I ever get a chance to meet my ancestors, on one day, I don't want them to say, you forgot me. I don't want them to say that. I don't want them to say, why didn't you ever remember me? I want them to say that I did the right thing by them. And not only that, I want them to say that they were proud of me because I am the dream and the hope of what they had to fight through in order for us to be who we are today.
And, let's just go back for a minute. We talk about the 50,000 years. 50,000 years ago, the Phoenicians sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. And as that white boy would make you believe that they were white sailors, they were not. They were international sailors, and they had created international trade on the high seas long before there was an America. But the white boy wants you to believe that the Phoenicians were white. They were not. They were African people. And, we continue to listen to this crap, we'll get lost again. But I'm not getting lost. I know who the hell I am. And if you don't like it, that's just your problem. Go ahead, Spike. I see you wanting to say something. Unmute.
Sound away?
We can't hear you.
Well, I wonder what did that. Let me see.
Okay, I can hear you now.
I did it. Unfortunately, sorry about that because I'm getting some background noise.
I just think it's important that, your history is your history. Make sure you pass it on to your ancestors, that they know the road which we travel and you value it. I wish I knew more about Charlie's side and more history about Charlie's side. That's about it for me. But I make sure my family members know, and I made sure they know that I did get to Vaden. I made sure my last great uncle, on his way from this planet, I said to him in his ear, I'll be the first Bailey to return home to Vaden, Mississippi, to find the family. That was my goal. And that's exactly what I did. I just think the history is so rich that you shouldn't dismiss it, period. You know, and if you dismiss it, you're dismissing the heart of who you are. All the things you do are mixed in that. We were told a long time ago, look for the high cheekbones. You'll know if the Native American is in the room. Look for those bones. Look at your face structure. You know what I mean? But Charlie was such a warrior. I think that drove me to want to know more about him, because I was carrying on the same way he did about this country. I was going to stand up. I couldn't help myself. So to hear his stories from my uncles and my grandmother and them, of course, I was intrigued and I wanted to know. And I found out he was just that warrior. And I think I am just that warrior. I'm proud being African American. I'm proud of my Native American side. There's no question. And that's all we got to do. And I don't care about people judging us, how many times we move, what generation. Be who you are. And let the naysayers go wherever they're at and say whatever they're at. I knew my place when Clyde joined in with me. But what Clyde gave me, Jay, was opportunity to understand more about Native American history and culture than I ever knew before. What Clyde gave me was a new way to protest and stand up that I wasn't even doing until I met him. We never did no marches in the winter and the cold. Clyde and them did, you know what I'm saying? When the police broke up our marches, we went home. When I was with Clyde, they tried to break up our marches, didn't nobody go home. So I learned all kinds of things from him in terms of how you do things, why you do things as the landlords of this land, you know? And so you can be twice removed or whatever, but that landlord blood in you should shine, and let it shine. If anybody should be here, the original landlord should be here. If you're part of that bloodline, you should be proud of that. And that's what I try to teach and tell everyone. His greatest weapon, Jay, has always been to divide and conquer. He divided Native Americans. He divided African Americans. He divided us from each other, on and on and on. And any country he went where there are people of color, I don't care if it was Vietnam, he divided. Korea, he divided. I mean, that's his greatest weapon. Native Americans, he divided. And so he uses us as a weapon against ourselves, be it psychological or through warfare. And we got to stand up to it and just stay focused on who we are, teach who we are, and be proud of that.
You know, a lot of this racist crap came out of the fear of the white man. There's a book that I would encourage everybody to buy or go to the library and get. It's called White Fragility. And it shows you just how fragile white people are. Now, let me clear something up. I don't have anything against white people, because all of them are not bad, just like all Indians are not good, like the one that I saw today. Don't have a damn thing to do with it. My grandfather used to always tell us, when we went down to South Carolina to visit my mother's people as kids, he would stand up and look at us and say, "Do you know what it's all about?" And my little cousin Mikey would say, "No, Grandpa, what's it all about?" And he said, "It's not about the pigmentation of your skin or the color of your eyes. It's not about the clothes you wear. It's not about your traditions or your culture or who you call God." He said, "Do you know what it's all about?" And he would put his right hand over his heart. And he would always say, "It's how you treat my heart." Mm-hmm. And he would always tell us that your brother, your sister don't necessarily have to look like you to be your brother or your sister, which is true. And I thought that with all of these 500-600 years of this infiltration and the murder of Native people, that we would have gotten a lot further along with that. But a colonized mind is a colonized mind.
We do have Judge Joe Brown here now. I'm going to let him into the broadcast.
Okay.
Hello, sir. We had a little technical difficulties, but he's here now.
And Judge Joe Brown is also a Choctaw Indian. Right, Judge? Okay.
That's right.
That's right.
My grandmother was.
Okay. Well, Judge, you are actually running for the mayoralship of Memphis, Tennessee. How do you feel about that?
That's right.
Why? Yeah. Why are you so involved in that? Tell us why. Tell us your story.
Well, bottom line is it's duty. There are stories, legends, recitations throughout recorded history of what happened when somebody failed to pick up the baton and deal with their duties and obligations. And oftentimes it was dramatized as a tragedy or a disaster for the person that declined to do that. And I've learned in life that when duty calls, you see to it, otherwise things do not follow that are well.
Okay.
So who am I to refuse? So I'm rising to the occasion. It seems time for somebody who can lead people, inspire people, get them to follow behind you. Somebody like that needs to step up to the plate and do what's necessary, because the leadership we have right now is pathetic. I wouldn't follow most of the people that are held out as leaders to the nearest restroom if I had diarrhea. Now, some of the methodologies that we have listened about, they're not just a white man. Art of War, attributed to one Sun Tzu. He discusses, or the treatise is pretty eloquent in its discussion of some of those very same things. Julius Caesar touched on them in some of his writings that you can peruse yourself. Let's see. If I'm not mistaken, if you read some of the musings that were dictated by some of the pharaohs over a 2,000-year period, you'll see that some of them discuss those things. Some of the Babylonian and Assyrian kings discuss them. So it's nothing new in humanity. It's just dealing with human nature. So I'd put it like this. It's like basketball. The rule book for the NBA has been the same essentially for a very long time. At one time, the NBA used to be one of the most racist institutions in America until Don Barksdale from UCLA started playing with the Lakers in 1946 and 47. And now when you think of basketball players on a professional level, mind's eye pictures somebody black. Might not be so good in the coaching and management department, but in terms of the players, it is. And what is the point of that? It's this. It's the lesson to be learned from this history. When you're not prepared to do something, don't expect to do well in the game. If you're not in the physical condition that is required, you won't do well. If you lack the physical attributes, you won't do well. If you lack the mindset, you won't do well. If you lack the team to be on, you won't do well. And one of the problems that I've seen over the last 50 years of my adulthood, longer than 50 years actually, is that we have all kinds of excuses and laments about what's being done wrong to us, but we are not prepared. Now, my Choctaw grandmother used to laugh at some of the colored folk in the family. And I can remember her pointing at them and saying, "You colored people, you get all upset and bent out of shape when white folk do you wrong. Say, we'd take scalps and nail them to the lodge pole and then grin about it."
Wow.
There is a difference. It's a mindset. And you see, we're always so worried about survival, we forget to think in terms of, oh, let's say a herd of cows. The herd survives, but the individuals wind up at Mickey D's or on the platter at some steakhouse. And, on the other hand, there are the bulls that die to defend the herd. So we need more bulls that'll die to defend the herd. And, like my grandmother used to say, there are too many of you colored people. Not enough of you were willing to die to save your people. So you got a bunch of you around, and you're not really fully human because you act like slaves, even though you're no longer enslaved.
Well, I find can I actually speak to that? And I wanted to
Sure.
explain to our audience when we talk about colored people. Colored is a term that was used to identify as people who were of mixed race. So a lot of people take that word as being offensive, but it really isn't an offensive word. It's something that we called ourselves because we are mixed race, because we didn't have any other identifiers until later on when we were identified as African American. But I want to speak to that.
Well, I use it as a pejorative. And as a matter of fact, my grandmother's husband, my grandfather, was one half Yoruba, and he was jet black. He was a doctor, but he was very dark, and he was born in 1852, and he lived to be over 100. I'm in my mid-70s, so yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But the colored is not said well, and it wasn't referring to mixed folk. It was to colored people who could not accept that they were black because that was too bad in terms of the way they looked at themselves. And we still have colored people right now who like to say, I'm mixed. No, by the standards of this world, you have noticeable drops, you become something else. Well, and they put it on you, so accept it. Now, I mean, I don't mind that you take it that way, but I wasn't using it as a compliment, and I didn't need any explanation for it because I wasn't taking it as colored being just a description of a generic thing. It's like NAACP.
Yeah.
National Association of Colored People.
I'm speaking. And please don't take it as I was saying it in a means that you were using it as a pejorative or anything like that. I was just explaining it to our audience members who doesn't understand what that terminology is. But that is a common name that was given to people of mixed race heritage as far back as the census. I mean, this is what we were called. We were either called mulatto, quadroon, or whatever, but eventually we became colored, and then Negro, and then Black, and then African American. So it is a term that was often used when they could not identify what your heritage was. You weren't white, which is the one thing that stayed constant throughout our census. You were of some kind of mixture, and so they identified you as color. And we actually refer to that ourselves as people that are of color. My grandfather on the census was listed as colored because when the census takers came in, that's what they called you. They could not identify what your race was. And we were often saying that that's who we were because we could not tell them that we were indigenous.
Absolutely.
Well, my grandfather was as dark as it got, but on the census documents I got pertaining to him, the household that I'm related to, my grandfather was dark as he was, doesn't get any darker, was listed as colored. My grandmother was listed as what she was, which was not colored, it was Indian, and parenthesis Choctaw. Parenthesis. So colored was what used to be used back when they didn't want a more, in that day, pejorative term, since a lot of the people concerned were born before the Civil War started, or not long after. So with that clarification,
Judge. Let Spike Moss get in. Spike, you got something to say, right?
Well, listening to it, The first thing we got to come to grips with as a people, we represent the human race. There's only one race, the human race. There's different nationalities, which speaks to the land base you came from or where you lived, but the human race is only one. Any man, any woman on this planet come together will make another human being. They are the same race. You cannot take a horse and a dog and put them together and make a pony puppy, but a man and woman anywhere in the world will make another human being. The nationality just speaks to where you're from. When he started playing this racist game, he began to separate people once he defined which race you in, which race you in. Ain't none of us got an extra heart. Ain't none of us got an extra lung. Ain't none of us got another color blood. Ain't none of us got an extra spare leg. It's one human race. And the nationalities is the only thing. You might have a French person with an African person, a Native American person with an Irish person. That's all it is. And he found this necessary. He's turned it into an institution, and if we're not careful, we start calling ourselves the colored race, the black race, the Negro race, on and on and on. Our ancestors were snatched off that planet called Africa. Back then it was Ethiopia. Some people said Kush. Before that, they were over there where Orion is, and it was called Persia, and we were called Persian people. However, we were just simply people from the human race, and we got to start there. The nationalities is the difference, not a race of people. And we play this game like these white professors, like we actually are the colored race. No, we're the human race, and here's the sad part that is denied. We're the foundation of the human race. You all know right now on this show, no white man and no white woman has ever made a brown or a dark-skinned baby. It is virtually impossible. It has never happened. Our ancestors could make a Snow White baby.
Have you ever met?
Two of them can make a Caucasian from the Caucasus Mountains where they live.
Have you ever met a Tamil? Have you ever met a Tamil Hindu Brahmin caste person?
No.
They're classified as Indo-Aryans. That's the one Hitler was talking about, but they were not blonde-haired, blue-eyed. They're Caucasians. They had something to do with the origins of Germany, but they didn't come from the far north. They came from India, and they're quite dark or swarthy. In fact, Kamala Harris kind of typifies the look, and so does our Tamil Brahmin caste mother, who was quite dark. Now, Aboriginals in Australia are classified as Caucasian. You have Ainu in the north of Japan who are classified as Caucasian. But now, back to your point, I used to breed horses, or rather my ex-wife was into breeding horses on a ranch I had. And you could take an Arabian, which was interesting. We did that, and breed the Arabian with what's known as a quarter horse. The two different types of horses. One is very fiery, hot-blooded, and the other one is a bit more stable, and you could breed them and you'd get crosses out of those that were interesting. You could take a Percheron and breed that big, huge draft animal with big feet, which was a very mellow horse, with some others, and you get different things. And I like Pasofinos, which Cortez's guys used as a war horse. And
okay. Now you're
they
talking
all
about
had different characteristics, different sizes, different looks, but they were horses.
Yeah, Joe Brown.
So there are different versions of people, but you can still interbreed. And you're right, everybody seems to have originated in Africa.
Judge Brown, for a second. I love horses. My daughter and her husband down in Virginia, they breed horses. This is going to blow you away. The father is a Palomino, and the mother is an Indian pony. And they gave me that horse. The horse came out snow white with blue eyes, and I call her the devil horse. So, you know, when you get genes mixing, you don't really know what it's going to be until that animal or that person is born. Am I right?
Right. I had an all white horse named Feather, and her mother was named Pearl, and she was black and white spotted.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions, and we do want to get to the questions. Thank you, you all.
I mean, but you know, it's like how you perceive yourself.
Okay.
So So,
As long as
so
you're cool
one of the
with who
questions
you
was,
are, you're okay.
one of the questions is who classified Arrow Indians and Aboriginals as Caucasian? Because
People that wrote the books
right,
themselves
exactly.
and the people themselves. See, basically, here's the other thing. You are not exactly talking about a group that got run over. Alexander the Great subjugated some of them when he wound up conquering a lot of India, but he never really suppressed them. And they were great warriors. They have a caste system based on who got there in sequence. The top of the heap of the Brahmin caste. Next below that, you have the warrior caste that's sworn to protect the Brahmin caste. And they are not exactly somebody that gets pushed over. Even during the British Empire, when the queen or the king was the emperor or empress of India,
Yeah.
the Rajas who were richer than the crown usually got treated first class situation when they went to Britain.
Okay, but
So it's
let's
not
talk about
exactly
that.
like they're getting pushed over. So I'm just saying the true
I need.
essence of the thing is you have to be a warrior if you want to be respected.
I
Okay,
got
but let's
If you're
talk
not a
about.
warrior, nobody respects
Joe.
you.
Okay,
Joe.
okay. So let's say this because there are a lot of people that are disagreeing with the fact that they are considered
I
a
don't care
Caucasian.
whether they
But
disagree, but the
Yeah,
this
bottom
is
line
Joe,
is,
this is
the
Joe,
what our
bottom
show is
line
about. This is
is
what our show is about,
Joe,
Judge.
might
Joe.
This
makes
is
right.
no
I
Judge.
understand, Joe, but you got to
See,
you got to let somebody else talk for a little bit.
okay. So this is the
okay, go
thing.
ahead.
So this is the thing. We know that they were classified as Caucasian by the Aryan group or like the Germans and stuff like that because there was no mixture at that time or what they considered to be mixture within their race. And so they considered them to be a Aryan race at that point. And they were original people. Now it states right here that in the jungles of Africa and Australia, and let's talk about that. The crater of man itself, those who are Aboriginal, those who are African, and those who are dark Indian and South Indian have been here since the beginning of time. So these are people who originated from the crater of the universe. These are people that stretched out. We are the descendants of most of these people. There's no way in heck that these people are considered Caucasian, and that is classified by a white man who calls them Caucasian. This is not what they truly are. If you ask an Aboriginal what they are, they will tell you that they're from a specific tribe. They don't say that they're Caucasian. Now, they may have been listed as Caucasian in their census,
Right.
but that is not how they classify themselves. Same as any African, and same as somebody who is from South India. They classify themselves by the people that they come from or the caste system in which they come from. But Caucasian, that is something that a white person gave them.
Okay, let me clarify.
All right. So what?
Okay, well, let me clarify something. There was a man in Virginia by the name of Dr. Walter Plecker, and he was the one that would not allow a child that was born to two Native people. He wouldn't allow to have that on their birth certificate. He was the father of eugenics. And, when you get a chance, look him up, Dr. Walter Plecker, and you're going to be surprised at how racist this white man was. So, Spike, I see you thinking. You think very loud. I can hear you think. Come on.
Well, I'm just trying to deal with the reality that dark skin was the dominating color that brought all to the planet. And then the mixture between those albinos and those of dark skin created the other shades. But before the water came and took the land was the bridge all the way around the planet. Mm-hmm. So you saw all these people, and the founders are the ones most scoffed at, and everything that came out of it. The game was taken over by the so-called Caucasians to tell everybody who we were, who we gonna be, on and on and on for generations, and we didn't claim our own history, our own beginning, and he's called us so many names by now, we even rename ourselves as African people, you know. And I'm just saying that the original Native Americans that lived here, he probably tried to do the same thing to them. But I'm just saying from the starting point, that dominating color was that dark-skinned man over there on that continent.
Mm-hmm.
And he still to this day can make those albinos. So what? We're
Well,
from the human race.
So what?
Can I say something? Can
But
I
the
say
point
something too?
is, so what?
Go ahead, Leslie. Leslie, go ahead.
Well, because that's the reason. That's why we have this show, because people want to discuss this kind of stuff. So that's why we're doing this in a friendly, debative way. But this is how we are having these conversations and having these discussions, because it opens up context that people need to learn about. But there are a lot of us who have been identified as Black here in the United States that were never from Africa. We were never enslaved. We were free people of color that came here on our own free will, or we were actually dark-skinned natives who have been living here all our lives, who have been classified as Black because that's how the Europeans saw us. So the thing is that we've been told a lie, essentially telling us that we all came from slavery, telling us that we all came from Africa. And the thing is, when you don't have an identity, when you have an enslaved mind, and that's what you think, that you no longer have a heritage that's lost to you, you think that way, you're always going to be disconnected. But a lot of us are extremely connected. If we go all the way back to some of our heritage, you will find, especially in my family in particular, they may have married people who were slaves, but a lot of my family members were never enslaved. And so this is the thing that we've been told. And I encourage anybody who's watching this broadcast to really seek your heritage. I'm not saying that not to be proud of your African heritage, but if you ask an African if you are African, they're going to tell you no, because you are not an African, you are something other. So you may be of African heritage, you may have family over there, but you are different from that, you know. So I'm telling you, go and find out who your people are.
And that'll give you your own personal.
Let me give you something to think about.
And that will give you your
Let me give you
own
something to think about.
Joe,
Okay.
you cut me off. Hold on.
I'm
And
sorry. I'm getting a delay here, and
Okay. Anyway,
you're breaking up. I didn't realize you were talking. Go ahead.
no problem. So listen, if you go back and search your family tree and find out who you are, that will give you a podium to stand on. But don't take anybody else's word of who you are or who they think you are. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, there is something that a whole lot of people in America need to understand in this generation, 2023. It's been operative throughout the time humans are being here. It's simple. It's called might makes right. Mao synthesized it by saying power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And that's the way humanity has worked with itself since day one. Now, if you are powerless, anybody can do whatever they want to do to you. If you have power, they can. That may be on a collective basis, that may be on an individual basis, that may be you're going to lose the war, but nobody wants to mess with you afterwards. Kamikaze, bonsai, or, you know, Native American acumen is a horse warrior. So it is what it is. And that's respected. You see, right now, when you want to fight, you don't think the man, the art of self-defense, Marquis Queensberry's rules of boxing. You think karate. You think kung fu. When you talk about somebody's aggressive, you look at the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne, June 6, 1944. They yelled the name of one of their famous foes when they jumped out, Geronimo. It's all about respect. You see, if you generate respect, even if you lose, you made an immortal statement because they will know you.
Okay.
Now, we need to understand that sometimes people need to pay attention to making that immortal reputation for certain things that are respected by humanity because of what humans are. Now, we eat everything that walks, flies, crawls, slithers, slimes on this planet if we choose to. We kill everything, and except for bacteria and microbes, viruses and stuff that do us in, anything that is around has to be accepted and protected by us. So when you are not the business, about the business, or incapable of the business of makes humans what they are, then other humans who are don't give you much respect unless you have some other kind of utility. Now, that's something that we need to learn, and it's not what we call ourselves, it's how we motivate ourselves.
Okay, Joe. Okay, Joe.
We have 2 minutes left, you all, before our broadcast. Can we do closing remarks, please?
Joe, 30 seconds, closing remarks.
Okay. Well, be proud of yourself and your group identity, whatever it may be. What you choose to call yourself is your business. It's not what somebody else imposes on you unless you allow the imposition. When you walk in a room, prepare yourself to take the whole room on if necessary. And that way, nobody will mess with you and you will get respect. So that's what it's about.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. We didn't cover the subject that I wanted to cover, so we're going to have to come back and do another part, violence in our communities. Spike Moss, your turn.
Well, I agree. It's not about what other people call you. It's about your history, your beginning. Grab on it, love it, stand with it. You know, I mean, they've always imposed and gave us different names and different flavors. There was a beginning. Stick to the beginning. Come down with those nationalities. We will be fine. Be proud of all of them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Spike. Leslie, your closing thoughts?
Well, as I always say, please educate yourself. You know who your history is, know your family. By that, then you will have more connectivity and you will know who you truly are by knowing your heritage and your ancestors.
I'm going to make my closing statement real short. Thank you, Joe Brown. Thank you, Leslie Fry. And thank everybody that watched this show tonight. The next time we do the show with the four of us, we're going to talk about some remedies to all of the violence that's taking place in our communities in America. I thank you all for joining us and being a part of this broadcast. And I'll tell you in the words of Cherokee, Dana Da, Go Ai, Wado. Talk to you next week. Peace out.